All right, so we got a special guest, Brad, for this segment, and actually he's been blowing up on Twitter X or whatever the hell the kids want to call it nowadays. But it's Oakland A's outfielder Brent Rooker. Brent, how are we doing?
Doing well. Happy to be here.
How's that off season going so far? I know it's fresh, but
yeah, it's been good. It's been relaxing. It's been doing not a lot of hanging out with my kid, a lot of playing golf, and a lot of tweeting so far. That's been about it.
It probably in that order, to be honest.
Yeah, it seems about right.
The tweeting's been working out, I got to say.
Yeah, it's been okay. It's been okay. Some positive feedback. There's always some negative feedback in there too, as there always is. But yeah, it's been okay.
A lot of people have a lot of things to say on Twitter in general, but especially with what you talked about with baseball. So we're kind of going to dive into that for people that are going to want to hear this. Initially, give a little background, so we'll fluff you up here a little bit, talk about your journey, but then get into the analytics, the nitty-gritty of why people are up in arms about certain ways that analytics are, and I don't even know what to say to that. A little bit about some similarities with the Orioles and Oakland, and then you face the Rangers and Astros quite a bit. So would love to hear your take on it, but let's start with this. And I think this was kind of interesting to me. So you went to Mississippi State, and I love that you chirped Texas A&M. That was electric. That was one of your good tweets. What was on the back of it? It was guys like lettering on their ass or something?
Yeah. They had the Texas A&M logo just across the back there. It's just a weird look. That whole. I mean, A&M, they have obviously some successful athletic programs, but it can be a little bit of a weird place.
That is weird for sure. I agree. Like, why do grown men want to look at other grown men's ass? If you're going to put letters on someone's ass, it's with the intent of looking at it. And I'm just kind of like, I'm good.
That's fair.
Don't need to.
I'll say this though, and Brent could probably relate to this. If that gives you 5 hits in a game, I'll have anything across my cheeks, to be honest, if it works out.
Dude, it's not much I wouldn't do for 5 hits in a game. So.
Oh my God, there isn't, especially say you haven't gotten a hit. It felt like in 3 weeks. But so for you, your journey, which has been awesome. You were drafted out of Mississippi State. You were a 38th round pick and decided to go back because you're a redshirt junior, if we got that cleared up. And then the same team drafts you the next year in the Minnesota Twins. You get drafted in the first round. Amazing. You debut in 2020. And then 2022 is a kind of a crazy year for you. You get traded in the Chris Paddock deal to San Diego. And then later on that year, you go to Kansas City. And so besides that, then you, correct me if I'm wrong, you're put on waivers then and then claimed by Oakland in 2023.
Yep.
So first off, that's a whirlwind of emotions. And can you just explain to people about you get drafted, great experience, you have all this opportunity, you go through the system pretty quickly, and then all of a sudden you're on the move, and now you don't seem to know where you fit in.
Yeah. Kind of going into the 2022 season, right, is I got the the second half in the big leagues in 21 with Minnesota. I had some good spurts where I had success, had some times where I struggled and knew I needed to get better. And then I come into 2022 spring training, just kind of where I want to be, which is with an opportunity to make a team. Just kind of have to go out and play and earn it. And we get through spring training, and it's the last day of camp, and I get a call and I'm being sent to San Diego, which it's sad in a way because I've been with one team, one organization my whole career. I've got really good friends there, still have really good friends there, and you're sad to leave. At the same time, it's exciting because you think you're going to get another opportunity and with a different team, maybe earn a spot. Spend most of that summer in AAA in El Paso, get up a few times with San Diego, never for more than 3 or 4 or 5 days at a time. Get optioned several times, then we get to the trade deadline, get traded again to Kansas City, and again, same thing. It's like, all right, maybe new opportunity, go out and win some playing time and hopefully do well. Was called up pretty quickly there, went to AAA immediately, played 5 games, did pretty well, went up for, I think, a month and a half. I was in Kansas City. You really only got 25, 30 at-bats over that time, so wasn't really given much playing time, just with the way their roster kind of shook out. They had a lot of young guys that wanted to play a lot. So spent some time there. Then obviously get, like you said, get put on waivers in November, and I think playing by Oakland, and it was the same feeling. It's all right, maybe this is the opportunity that sticks. Maybe this is the one that I need, and then end up working out that way, which is great.
Yeah, I mean, you become you not only make the team, but you become an all-star. So I think it worked out the way that you were hoping for. But Brad and I were talking about, and Brad, maybe you can touch on this question. Like, there's a lot of comparison between Oakland and the Baltimore rebuild.
Yeah. I think, Brad, you want to expand on that or just go?
Yeah, no. So, I mean, obviously the, Orioles, have lost over 100 games 2 years ago. And it kind of, aside from the fans this year, I'm sure in Oakland was the dynamic there was interesting to say the least. And I would love to get your take on that too. But, just the quick turnaround that we've seen, are you seeing any similarities within the A's organization that, kind of remind you of what the Orioles have been able to do, and even some of the other teams? I mean, we've seen it with Tampa too. Some of these lower budgeted teams are really just outperforming these high salary teams, and it's just kind of been interesting to watch from a fan perspective. I just kind of want to get your take on it.
Yeah, I think the way Baltimore's done it, the success they've had, is they are ultimately the model of that kind of thing right now, right? Is we played them pretty late in the year. It probably would have been either August or September as the season was winding down at our place. And the series kind of finished, and we looked at it. It was like, okay, that's a really, really good team who's going to go compete, going to make the playoffs, and going to try to make a run. Who were in a very similar position a few years ago to where we are now. And at that time when we played them, was kind of when we had, Zach Geloff was here. He was playing well. Lawrence Butler's here playing pretty well. Esteury Ruiz is getting his first full season. Noda's doing the same thing. Soderstrom's here. It's kind of like we have this young wave of guys coming in with not a lot of experience, but who are really, really good players. And you're kind of looking across the diamond being like, they were where we were. They were 2 years ago where we are now. So the possibility to get out of this and turn it around and really make a run and be a good team is there, and they are proof of it. So it's a little bit of motivation. It's a little bit of a good way to look at it. Like, we know this season didn't go like we wanted to. We lost a lot of games, but there is a model and there is a way to ultimately be competitive and be really, really good, and really not that far off of the future.
So in the baseball sense, you're giving us the great layout of what could happen. But I want you to talk about personally now.
Sure.
I was with the Orioles organization when the new front office came in, and you could tell we knew what was happening, the rebuild, but also you're trying to figure out who's a part of your future. And people, I think, forget when it's kind of out there without them saying it. You're going to go out there to try to compete to win every game, right? I mean, of course, that's the competitor in you.
Yep.
But it was naive then to say, well, the Orioles are going to try. They're looking to contend in 2019, 2020, 21, whatever it may be. For you as a player, just even touch on minor league baseball to get to the big leagues. The dynamic doesn't change. It changes from just always being team component. You're playing for your career. And so for Oakland, how I look at with you had an opportunity that reminded me of what Cedric Mullins, Anthony Santander, and some of the guys in Baltimore were playing for their future.
Yeah.
So could you just talk on how are you able to stay locked in, realizing, you want to go out to win, but really this is the business of the game, and you're trying to be a long-term option here in Oakland?
Absolutely. Coming into the season, making the team, the way I saw it was, okay, I have proven everything I have to prove in AAA. Every year I played in AAA, I've put up really, really good numbers. I've put up the power numbers people are looking for. I've done exactly what I need to do at that level for a team to look at me and be like, okay, give him a shot in the big leagues, and either he's a part of the future and he's a part of what we need to build around, and he can repeat what he did in AAA in the big leagues, and he's ultimately a really productive player, or he can't, and we know that, and because he's 28, we can move on and get a younger guy here. And that's kind of how I looked at the opportunity that I had. Like you said, I was playing and I was competing and I was trying to prove to other people that I could establish myself as a guy who plays every day in the big leagues and who goes out there and produces at the highest level. And I wasn't a guy who was a fringe 4A guy, as I had been labeled for a couple of years, a guy that's too good for AAA but can't quite get it done in the big leagues. I wanted to get rid of that label and prove to a team that is rebuilding, like we know, and kind of go out and show, okay, I can be a part of this rebuild, and I can be a guy that can be looked upon for the next 3, 4, 5 years into the next window that you're looking to compete in, who can be here and can be a centerpiece in this lineup.
You know what I was realizing there when you said the term fringe 4A, Brad, do you understand what that concept means?
No clue.
Would you like me to elaborate? So when they call guys 4A guys, it means that they're better than AAA, but they're not good enough to be in the bigs consistently.
Yeah.
So a lot of people,
which is what I was like the epitome of looked at as that guy for like 2 years. It was like, I'll go to AAA, I'll OPS 1,000 here as long as you want me to. But when I go to the big leagues, I can't do enough to stick, and that's where I was 2 seasons until I ultimately hopefully got out of it this past year.
And you see that a lot, right? Like there's a lot of guys that are kind of like almost career minor leaguers, right? Like, and I'm assuming that's because most of the time they are those fringe guys, right? They just can't quite make the jump for whatever reason. So that makes sense.
Yeah, it's a fascinating phenomenon, if you will. It's not even a phenomenon, but it's just the reality of how hard. That's why when I get pissed off, Brad, when people are like, "Well, these guys in the majors suck," and like you could have someone replaced. No, it's not. That's not the case.
It is a different sport. Like AAA in the big leagues is a different sport, and that's just the way. It repeats itself countless times. You see guys, like I said, they just tear up AAA, go to the big leagues, and can't necessarily do it. It's because there's a different game being played there than there is.
So, just to kind of like break that down, is there like, and either one of you can answer this just because I guess it's something that just popped in my head, but like, when you say it's a different game, like is there any sort of tangible way that you can explain that? Like, what is it that makes it so different? Like the NFL, everybody talks about how it's so much faster than it is for college. So what's the difference between, making that jump in AAA to the bigs?
The best way I try to describe it is from a hitter, it's depth and consistency of bullpens and starters. So what I try to talk about is like, if you take a 20 at-bat sample size in AAA and a 20 at-bat sample size in the big leagues, you'll look back across those 20 at-bats each level, but that wasn't that different. Like I saw some big league caliber stuff in AAA. Yeah, obviously see big league caliber stuff in the big leagues. And I really don't feel like that 20 at-bats, that week's worth of at-bats compared to the big leagues at-bats were very different. Like I think it's pretty similar. And then you can do the same thing with like a 250 at-bat sample size and the 250 at-bat sample size in AAA and the big leagues. And you look back and like those two are not the same at all. Like the big leagues, there was never a break. We were down 9-1 in the 7th, and they brought out a guy throwing 99-mile-an-hour sinkers with 2 off-speed pitches he could throw for strikes. And like that doesn't necessarily exist in AAA. It's kind of those depth pieces. When you get kind of into the end of bullpens, and they're still bringing out guys throwing 100 with wipeout stuff, and there's just no breaks. So when like, especially young guys, when I get asked like, what's the difference? That's how I try to explain it. You look at small sample sizes, you're going to think it's the same. You look at really big sample sizes at both levels, and there's just clear and distinct differences between the two.
And that's real. It's just everyone how I described never got up to the big leagues, but you would know better. You've seen it. How I was trying to describe it is exactly that you are. Everyone understands when you get to that next level, you have to be really good and consistent at whatever that may be. But now you're just having more of those guys backed up over and over and over again. And that's hence the no breaks.
Yeah.
That's why. Yeah, go ahead.
When you're in AAA, the very best relievers on AAA rosters are the guys who are riding the option train going back and forth, right? They'll go up to the big leagues for 5 days, they'll throw twice, they'll get option for 2 weeks. Those are the best guys in the AAA pens, whereas the best guys in the big league pens are the guys who did that at one point, but now they're established and they're up there and they're running up there every other day with just wipeout stuff. And I think that's kind of where the difference lies.
Well, you talk about 4A fringe guys then, because if we're going to say about with you, there's another Oriole player that blew up this year, and that was Ryan O'Hearn. And for me, I love this type of shit. It fires me up because to see guys make that jump. So for you balled out. I think you had 30 jacks, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Props to you. That's big.
No big deal.
Not a big deal, especially against the Orioles. Maybe not good for Orioles fans or for some of my teammates. They're joking about you taking Dean deep, and you're saying, "Oh, the sweeper wasn't that bad." Unfortunately, it was middle. But, but anyway, you and Ryan O'Hearn were 2 players. You guys were teammates in Kansas City, correct?
Yep, that's correct. I got there, right after the trade deadline, so early August, and he obviously been there for several years. So we played together about a month and a half in Kansas City.
And neither of you guys really got much of an opportunity there, at least for that season.
Yeah, we were both we pretty much joked we were just kind of one person on the bench. Like he was the lefty option, I was the righty option. We both kind of got spot starts, matchup wise, and platoon wise. And then if we needed a lefty pinch hitter, he was the guy. If we needed a righty pinch hitter, I was the guy. So we hung out a lot in the dugout. We talked a lot of hitting. Got to know him pretty well in that short amount of time. Really, really good guy. Talked to him throughout this season too. Whenever we played him and then in between, and was super happy he got an opportunity and did what he did with it.
Well, it just seems like both of you guys needed a fresh start, and everything clicked, and now the rest is hopefully history. I know a lot of people want him to stay in Baltimore, and for you, hopefully it continues out in Oakland. You keep hitting 30 jacks. I don't think anyone will complain about that. But I think one thing that Brad and I talked about a lot then, your Twitter blowing up was over analytics.
Sure.
So first off, before we get into the pitching stuff here, you tweeted out something saying the things that mattered the most to you was it barrel percentage, hard hit percentage, and chase percentage?
Chase percentage, and then I'll look at expected stats too. Just because the expected stats, you can really get into the weeds, but the expected stats basically, if my expected batting average and my expected slugging is high, then I am making quality contact. Like that's all that means. People want to say whatever they want to say about expected stats, but if I'm hitting the ball well and making solid contact consistently, the expected stats are going to be good. So that's just kind of what I'm.
And there it is right there. And But that's not a new school thing, by the way.
No.
I always thought hit the ball hard.
Yes.
Try to barrel it up.
Right. That's
and
it.
Don't and
but the goal of the game forever has just been to hit the ball hard as often as you can.
And don't swing it at shit in the dirt.
Exactly. So
but you're going to.
Those stats are just try to do it as little as possible because you're definitely going to. Those stats right there. It's like, am I swinging good pitches? And then when I swing at good pitches, am I hitting it hard? And that's what it comes down to. If you do those two things a lot, then you're going to have success. And the traditional numbers that people want to look at are going to be good.
So why is it that like in this day and age, and baseball has always been about stats since the dawn of time, but like it seems like now more than ever, especially with like next gen stats and everything else, that it's just it gets to a point to where it is being over analytical. And we talked about this in the NFL. I mean, Ryan and I specifically with like Brandon Staley, where we think that he just kind of gets crazy with the analytics, and it's just like there's no real balance there. But like you were just talking about, old school ball, and it kind of really what it comes down to that is that oversimplifying it, or is these stats that come in that a lot of managers base their strategies off of makes sense, or are you a believer of kind of like that old school ball, and then it's just like whatever, it's just as simple as these percentages?
I think there's a balance, and I think it's a player by player difference. For me, like I want all the information I can get. That's the way my brain processes things. It's what I need. I'm not as talented as a lot of guys I'm competing against, but I can outthink them, and I can out-apply information, or I can apply information better than they can. So if I get all that information, all that data, I give myself the best chance possible to have success. There are plenty of guys in the league who do not need it, who do not want it, who can go up there and just hit no matter whatever guys are throwing, they'll just go up there and hit it. And people want to talk about Luis Ariz, like you stick him in there, having never seen video, having no idea what pitch this guy's throw, having no idea how hard the guy throws, like he's going to go in there and get a hit.
Does that piss you off? I mean, it's got to be like the kid that like, doesn't study for tests and just gets A's. Like that's just got to piss you off, right? Like
I played with Louis in high A, double A, triple A, and the big leagues in Minnesota. So we came up together. He's one of my favorite teammates ever, and watching him hit is so much fun. Just because you can go up there knowing literally nothing, and one of the first two pitches he will get a base hit on, and it's crazy. And it's a skill that I'm envious of, but I don't have that skill. So I have to have the information to give myself a fighting chance to compete with guys like that.
Is that like more along the lines of just raw talent? Just like, I just can see the ball, I hit the ball, and they're not even thinking about what pitch is coming?
Yeah, I think with him, there's a lot. I mean, he can think through a bat very well. He knows what guys are going to throw and how they're going to try to get him out, but he can also hit any pitch at any time, which I think is just off the charts hand-eye coordination. If you look at him, there's a stat on Baseball Savant, if we would get really into this, called sweet spot percentage, right? Which is the amount of times you hit a ball between, I think it's 15 degrees and 35 degrees, which is like optimal launch angles to get hits. And so, guys, if you want to go out there and be like, well, Luis Ariz doesn't need advanced statistics, or like they don't apply to him because he doesn't hit the ball hard. Well, he is in the 100th percentile sweet spot percentage. So he hits the ball at the optimal launch angles more than anyone else in the entire league. So it's like you can go out there and say like he doesn't need, or this stuff doesn't apply to an old school guy like him, or like you could say it probably with Pete Rose, like he's just out there getting base hits, slapping around the yard, whatever you want to say. I bet if you looked at it, I bet Pete Rose hit the ball at an out from launch angle a lot, and that let him get a lot of hits. Very similar to the way I'm sure Tony Gwynn was the same way, just like Louis doing now. Is these stats that people want to get mad over? Just explain what's happening. Like that's all they're doing. They explain what's happening and why what's happening is happening. And that's kind of what we look at. And for me, it's like I want to use them. Some guys don't want to use them, but they're still going to exist. They're still going to explain what's happening in the game. If any of that made sense.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Brad.
No, I was just saying, yeah, absolutely makes sense for sure.
Yeah. I mean that's a part of it. Just that when growing up, and I'll even admit I was a little bit more resistant to with the analytics, because sometimes it gets thrown in your face so much. You're like, whoa, the overload. Yeah. I just want to be able to go out there and smack the hell out of a baseball. But to your point, if you do the right things, the numbers are going to show you that it's working out well. If you hit a ball 450 feet, I guarantee you got a hold of it and you smack that. And so it makes sense. But just because it's talked about so much, and we're in a day and age of social media where everything's up, everyone has an opinion. That's where the old school versus new school kind of gets brought in. I think an old school, new school philosophy that's really started to grind your gears, at least, is this whole debate between sweepers and sliders. So why do you think then this is becoming such a heated topic now?
I don't know. And that's the part that bothers me, is that like they're just the resistance to not even change, just the resistance to like new information. Because like at one time, slider was a new term. Like it used to, I promise there was a point in time in baseball's history where every kind of breaking ball was just called like a curveball or something. And then we said, well, no, these two are kind of different. So let's call this one a curveball, this one a slider. Whereas same thing with fastballs. At one point, they were just all fastballs. And then we got, well, no, this one moves a little bit different. So let's call it a sinker. And then this one's a four seam, and then this one's a cutter. And no one has any problem with any of that, except when we try to differentiate this other kind of pitch from just a slider, people lose their minds. And I just like, I don't understand it. It's just, I don't know why one is okay and then the other one, like this new one, is just it's destroying baseball. I'm like, it's ruining the game that we loved in 1963. I don't get it.
I will say I didn't really understand sweeper when it came out. I even said, I'm like, isn't it a slider? Like when I heard it, but then when you watch it, the shapes are different. And actually, specifically, we have two up here of Kevin Kelly. You said that has disgusting ones. I guess, can I pull this one up, Brad?
Yeah, you should be able to.
Yeah, I got it right here. Which one? We'll do. Oh, this one. So here's the first one, just right on the black. Hey, no, we're going to go back to the beginning here because we want to. That's not fun. Well, this is the one that really isn't fun. And to probably people that don't like the Astros still, this is something that they might enjoy. But this is what we call just breaking your soul. Oy, okay.
Never stops moving glove side. It just keeps going out there.
Okay, so I want you to explain that. I mean, that pitch is a good 10 feet outside, it feels like, right? Yeah. But the perception of it's coming off, and with the slider, the way it's coming down, I'm trying to get my finger in. The way the slider's coming down, it's coming more like Wainwright was saying, it's going to drop down. The sweeper just keeps going across.
The sweeper looks like it never comes down. So, like, the difference of why it matters for hitters is if I know a guy throws a traditional slider and I'm sitting on that pitch, I'm looking for slider, I want to hit the slider. When he throws it, I have to try to be beneath that pitch because I know it's going to come down from where it starts. In order for me to square it up and barrel it, I need to try to either lift it in the air or I need to try to swing beneath it because I know it's going to drop. If I try to do that with a guy I know is throwing a sweeper, I'm going to miss under the ball over and over again because it's never going to come down like a traditional slider is going to. If I know a guy is throwing a sweeper, I have to try to either be on top of the ball or try to hit it down to make sure I account for it not dropping like a normal slider is going to.
And again, like that makes sense, right? Yeah. I mean, Brad, I told Brad he's going to keep learning more and more about the analytics of this. You go very deep about this, but you're also explaining.
And I talk about this too. To be fair, people who want to tell you, like, who just want to keep saying it's the same pitch, it's the same pitch. When you're watching it on TV, it's not a discernible enough difference on TV most of the time to tell the difference because, like Adam said, like maybe a slider's going 7 to 8 inches horizontally and the sweeper's going 14 to 15 inches horizontally. That's going to be it's like 6 to 7 inches of horizontal difference, which when you're watching it on your TV from far away from an offset angle, like you probably can't tell that it's that big of a difference. And it probably looks like the same pitch. But when you're in the box and it's the difference between a barrel, or like 6 or 7 inches is the difference between a barrel and the end of the bat, or the end of the bat fouling it off and swinging and missing for strike 3. Like, that's a big difference. And it's a difference that it's helpful to know. Whereas I understand when you're watching it on TV, like, you probably can't tell that much of a difference. When we are in the box and they're both being thrown at us, that much difference in break and that much difference in break direction and movement profile. Wow, it just got really dark in here. Sorry about that.
You're good.
Like,
Setting the mood.
It's a big enough difference that it's helpful for us to know that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I would say that, like, watching this, you know, from this angle, I mean, you can kind of see that it's right out of the hand, it's moving. So I would make the argument that, and this is just my untrained eye, I would make the argument that, like, a traditional slider at least starts out at the hand, and then starts to move late.
There's a shape to it, right? There's
pitch,
like
right.
There's a lot of times there's a shape to the traditional slider, whereas that, like, and to be fair, Kevin is like an extreme version of that. He's like a low slot, so it sets up for it, and it's one, I would assume the movement profile is one of the more extreme ones in the league.
Right.
But it's going to come out of his hand straight, and then it's just going to look like it just frisbees sideways, like
time,
where there's no shape and there's no change of direction. It's just moving one way like the entire time.
And that's the hard part of it. And I will say, and the other part too, sometimes like, your ultimate goal is to have that movement, right? As a pitcher, you want to have that sweep. If you break off a slider, but as we know, sometimes you don't even throw it the way you want to. And then if that happens, therefore, that's going to affect how much break it's going to have, how much it's coming across, backdoor sliders, backup curveballs, backup anything. It's where the release point for pitchers, if they don't get it to where they want to, they're not be able to snap it off as well. Right. So that's a whole other component that you guys got to deal with. I always tell people sometimes when you're not expecting it and you're expecting a slider to come into you and it backs up and it's perfectly on the black. Yeah, it sucks. It's the best mistake pitch a pitcher can ever throw.
It happened last night that Houston late in the game when Spores was in, and he backed one up to I think Jeremy Pena there. He flipped the center, and you can tell Jeremy's frustrated. But like when you look at Spores and watch film, he does it like a lot, where they kind of like the slider, righty slider, instead of going away from you, just kind of it has the downward angle, but then it just kind of chases you in the whole way because for whatever axis he puts on, it doesn't allow it to catch and go to his glove side. It's a really, really tough pitch to hit. He's gotten me on it several times where it just like it comes out of the hand. You think it's a hanger and you think you're going to crush it. And then you just jam it to the shortstop over and over again because it
makes you feel good.
Slightly more. Yeah. It just doesn't catch and go to his glove. Yeah.
It makes you feel really good about yourself. Then your hands are hurting, your bat's broken. And you're thinking maybe some other thoughts.
There was like a half second, not even half. There was a 10th of a second where you thought you were about to hit a double. And then you hit a 73-mile-an-hour ground ball to shortstop and you're out. You're like, oh, that sucks.
Man, 73 sounds good. I'd take that. I'd probably hit it 30. I'll say this then. The other part of this before we get into, I want to, because you just talked about with the Rangers and Astros, I want you to break that down. But the last thing, the other part is just straight heaters now. I thought you were getting into it with someone about that a 92-mile-an-hour heater on the black is easier to hit than 100 miles in the middle of the plate. And we have the video. Spencer Strider gave up his first extra base hit ever
2 years.
when his fastball is 100 or more. Yeah. I think we have that some here, right, Brad?
Yeah.
Somewhere down here. Just for a whole whammy.
I mean, that ball was crushed.
Hammered.
Castellanos. We talked about not poking the bear with Harper. I don't know if
Nick gets locked in. It's scary.
He was locked in all right, those 2 games in Philly, man. But to your point, that's a middle end fastball, and people might go, that's not a great location pitch. But we talked about this, Brad and I have, that's Felix Bautista's throwing 102 down the middle. And occasionally it will be away, but I mean, that's not easy.
Even if you go watch all of Spencer's fastballs before that one that were 100 or 101 in the middle third, and they're swing misses or foul balls just because velocity is hard to hit, and like it's not. People will come at me like that's a bad. I'm like, it's not an opinion. Like if the expected, like the batting average on ball, not even expected, the real batting average on balls in the middle of the plate that are 100-mile-an-hour four-seam fastballs is lower than the actual batting average of slower velocities on the edges. Like it's not like I'm not telling you an opinion. I'm just like quoting stats that we have hundreds of thousands of pitches worth of sample size on.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing
it's
where
still make people very mad.
Right. Well, that's why we've talked about. The Orioles fans have had the luxury to watch Felix Bautista, and hopefully he comes back well in 25. Felix was my teammate in 21 in AAA.
Felix is one of the very few at bats I've had in the big leagues where I like the at bat was over, and I was like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do with that. Like, if I had to go do it again, I don't know what I would have changed. Like I don't. Most time you get out and you strike out, like this is the adjustment I would make for next time. With him, it's just like I don't know. Like I got nothing for that.
We've been huge Fujinami fans, since he came to Baltimore.
Fuji's the man.
And it's like,
that was the other thing when they met. You guys were teammates,
right? Yeah, I was just about to say, like,
Fuji's the man.
Same type of thing, right? Like 103 miles an hour. Like, and I've said this since he came to Baltimore. It's just like, doesn't matter where it's at on the plate. It's hard to hit 103 miles an hour. I don't care how it's coming at you.
Absolutely.
So what do you think for him then with Fuge? Do you think it's just more of him getting the reps? Was it trying to get used to being in America? Because his stuff, when he throws it for strikes, it's unhittable.
It's some of the more electric stuff in the entire league when he's in, and not even in the zone, but like just around the zone. It's crazy. That splitter, he throws a splitter at 95. He throws the four seam 101. He throws the cutter at 92. Like it's electric stuff. I think we saw a big difference. Obviously, the Baltimore did too. But when he went from starter to the bullpen, the command got a little better. He was in the zone more, and he had like a month and a half run with us before we traded him, where he was, just completely lights out. We brought him to the game.
Do you think that's a pressure thing? Do you think that like there's just added pressure as a starter, and then maybe he just felt more comfortable because he didn't have that pressure? And the only reason I asked is because he actually mentioned like being under pressure. I think Ryan, remind me, it might have been like first or second game out.
It was the Blue Jays. He was playing Toronto. He came in with the bases juiced, and he drilled two guys in a row. But he actually got up in the count, in an 0-2 count. I think he drilled Chapman too. But yeah, he talked about pressure being to him. So that's obviously a mental component with him.
Yeah, it could be. I don't want to speak for pitchers just because I'm not one. I don't have that experience. But I would think part of it going from starter to bullpen is trying to make sure you go 5, 6, 7 innings, and maybe that changes mechanics a little bit. That changes the way your stuff plays. Whether we bring in as an 8th inning setup guy, you go blow it out for 15 pitches. Maybe put your body in a better position to kind of repeat mechanics, and it's easier to throw strikes or something. I don't know. I think that there could be multiple factors that go into that.
And it could just be the human dynamic being overseas, playing, trying to get used to America. Well, and also he went from Japan is obviously one of the best professional leagues in baseball. Now you go to the league where we talked about consistency and depth for pitchers. You have the exact same with lineups. So that's where my mind was going. But I hope in Baltimore, we've been talking about, we hope he comes back. That's our ultimate goal. Maybe if he's on the Orioles and you hit the Orioles so well, maybe that would be good for you. I still don't understand.
I did not hit Fuji well. I got one at bat off Fuji when he was in Baltimore. It did not go well for me. So.
Well, your other ones did. I think you had 6 jacks versus the Orioles. I think you had more extra base hits versus Baltimore than you did singles.
That's probably right.
It is right. It is Brent. I looked it up. You're talking about stats? I have the stats. You raped against Baltimore.
I had 2 pretty good series against them for whatever reason.
Must be the blue moon in Fells Point, just getting your breakfast fixed.
It might have been.
Well, so hey, last thing, then we'll wrap up. Then Stroh's Rangers. These teams.
Yeah. You
played them a ton.
Mm-hmm.
So in your mind right now, they're both playing extremely well. The Rangers are scalding hot.
Mm-hmm.
What's in your mind right now? What has been their strength to get to this point? And is there a weakness for each team? If there's going to be a chance for each one, we'll start with the Rangers. So Rangers, I thought for the longest time was, can their bullpen hold up?
Yeah.
But really their starters have been unbelievable.
Yep.
And their lineup is showing you that they are as good as advertised, which they were for the majority of the season.
Their lineup is crazy deep. I think the way the teams match up is interesting because I think the strength of the Rangers is just the depth of the lineup and how you saw. Tavares hitting 9-hole last night is as good a 9-hole hitter as you're going to find anywhere. Nate is hitting 7th right now. Nate is OPS 780 this year, won a Silver Slugger last year. The depth of their lineup is just, it's crazy. And then I think the opposite on Houston's side is the depth of the Houston bullpen is nuts. Not taking away from the starters they have. Obviously, Verlander and Framber's going tonight. And then I don't know who goes to them game 3, Hunter Brown maybe or whoever it is. They have really good starters with the depth of that bullpen, with the ability to get to the 7th inning and run out Neris, Montero, Abreu, Presley. It's just the back end of their bullpen's crazy, and that matches up. It makes for a really fun watch against the depth of Texas's lineup. And like you said, Texas's starters are doing great. They're getting Scherzer back, he's going game 3, right? I mean, that's obviously a huge addition to that rotation with how well Montgomery threw. And then who's going tonight for them? Evaldi? I mean, yeah, of the year of Evaldi. The year he had speaks for itself. So there's so much depth on both sides in all areas. And I think that's kind of the strength of both teams, is just the depth that they have. Every guy they run out there is a really high-quality player.
Yeah, I think that's the exciting part. And really, the AL West was loaded, to be honest. Seattle was really good. The Angels went up and down, obviously, with a lot of different, they just kind of really fell apart with in the second half of the season. But I guess one thing, I had a quick question, and then we'll get you out of here. It had to do, Brad and I had this conversation. There's momentum matters in baseball.
Yeah.
And there's no excuse. You got to go out to play. But the only team that's figured out the buy so far in the last 2 years is the Houston Astros. It's the only team that's figured it out. And that's not an excuse. But how many days you were in the All-Star game? Again, shout out to you for being a stud.
Thank you.
For more guys, that was a 4-day period.
Mm-hmm.
So in your mind, do you think that that's something that they're going to have to look into to change the format for teams moving forward? Because if we're going back to 2022, the Yankees survived a 5-game series with the Guardians. In the NLCS, the Padres and the Phillies knocked out the two best teams. So far this season, 3 of the top 4 teams with the buys are all out of the postseason. And actually only one of those teams got a victory, and that was the Braves.
Yeah.
So, and again, that's teams getting hot. Momentum's a real thing. But do you think that that's something that they need to look into?
I don't think so. I don't know what the solution is. Has it been that way in the past? You guys help me out here. Is there?
Yeah. So they just changed it for the last 2 years, and it used to be a wild card winner go home game.
Yeah.
Just a winner go home game. But now they're saying, hey, winning your division matters, so you get a bye, and you don't have to play in the 2 out of 3 series. That was the biggest difference. Is that teams get a 3-game series instead of a winner go home mentality.
Yeah, it almost seems like the advantage that you're getting ends up being your disadvantage. And I would equate this to like golf, because I play a lot of golf. And so I know if I go a certain stretch without, getting some swings in, even if it's at the range, I just feel like I'm off, So you almost got to wonder, if you're playing 162 straight games like that, and then you get this pretty decent sized break compared to the rest of the season, does that actually impact, how you'll perform, with that bye?
Yeah. It's an interesting question. And I was on Eric Kratz's show the other day. I know Eric, and I was on with him, and I think Brock Holt was on at that time. But we were saying, if the teams, or if people feel like it's such a disadvantage, if you want to give the division winners the choice between, hey, you can play the 2 or 3, or you can get the 5 days off, no one is ever going to choose to play the 2 out of 3. So I mean, is it really like, that's kind of where you look at it as, do you think it really is an advantage or disadvantage, or is it just these teams that go in and win ultimately the 2 biggest games of their season, build crazy momentum coming into this new series? I think it's more to do with that than there being an actual disadvantage of having time off. And how you combat that, or how you fix that, if it even is an issue, I don't know. But I don't think it's that these teams who lose come out playing worse because of a layoff. I think it's more that these teams that win the series just build momentum. And they're playing with a really high energy, coming off two wins that are that big, that they kind of come in and play well in the next series.
Well, and I think it's also ridiculous as far as the Rangers are concerned, that like they just haven't even lost a game. Like, I don't even know. I don't care how much momentum you think you have. Like, it's so ridiculously hard to win in a row in the postseason. Nonetheless.
You're playing the best of the best now on a consistent basis. If the Rangers keep playing like they are, they're going to win the World Series. I know Philly's on a different level too right now. Yeah. But fair to say, if that lineup's as deep as we've talked about with Texas, and then their pitching now is elevated, I don't see a team beating them, even with how great Philly is, because if Philly does beat them, that means that the Texas is not playing whatever juggernaut baseball they're playing right now. It's been fun to watch. But I think that wraps it. Brad, you good?
Yeah, I'm good. I just wanted to add too, just like you're talking about the depth as far as the Rangers were concerned. I mean, we haven't even talked about Corey Seager and just like the game, the time he's having right now too. It's just like you just have these all stars that are on the team, and it's just crazy. We talked to Gavin Sheets. He said, having Corey Seager on that team just transformed them. It's amazing how one guy
should hitter in the game back in your lineup. That's going to help. It
never hurts. Yeah. Never hurts. I mean, that's the thing is that whole time that you were talking about depth, we didn't talk about Corey Seager, who is an MVP type player.
Oh yeah,
he's already in your lineup.
He's unbelievable. Watching that guy hit, like the two guys this year where I watched them hit, and I was just like, that is something different happening with those guys. It's him and Freddie Freeman. Just the at bats they have, the pitches they take, and then the pitches that they don't miss when they get. It's just like those two guys are just on a different planet than we're all like we joke about this, like we're all big leaguers up there. We're all really good, but there's levels to big leaguers, and like those guys are just on another planet than most of us out there.
That's a great comp. I love watching Freddie Freeman hit. Yeah. I also love watching Yordan Alvarez hit bombs, but I was expecting him to. I guess Montgomery pitched him really well last
night. His pitch signatures were nuts, and the locations he was throwing Yordan were crazy too. He didn't miss. Montgomery didn't miss not once.
It's unbelievable, and then that's hence a big reason why they won the game. But it should be fun. The series will be great. This insight's been phenomenal. Next time you're in Baltimore, though, I might. If you're up for it, there's these things called Roostarts. If you like big old pastries, might have you make one at this spot.
Yeah, love to. Would love to.
Hell yeah. Well, hey, that's all I got. I think before we go, Brad, if I do this correctly, if you like this video, please subscribe, like. I'm so bad at this. What else, Brad?
Yeah, you're good. Just hit that notification bell too to get notified every time we put up a new video. We certainly appreciate you guys tuning in and watching. And Brent, we appreciate you too, man. Thanks so much for coming on the show.